Today, we are very lucky to be joined by Bob Glenn, Teledyne ISCO's regional manager, and Jeff Vandehoef, Teledyne ISCO's product support specialist. With that, I would like to turn it over to Bob.
Thank you, Sharon, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Great to be here with you today to talk about our in-depth sampler review, all things samplers, going into some detail, some big detail about our oldest and most established flagship product, the automatic sampler. I'm joined today, as Sharon said, by Jeff Vandehoef, many-year veteran of our product support team and one of our sampler experts. So it's great to be with you, and without further ado, we'll get started on today's presentation. First, I'm going to cover today's agenda. We're going to start out talking about Teledyne ISCO in general and talk a little bit about the origins of sampling and why we do it and why it's important. We'll then get into samplers and sampling, get down in the weeds and talk about traditional markets and applications which are appropriate for those products. We'll talk about some rapidly emerging markets and really an exciting time to be involved in water and wastewater sampling right now, because there's some emerging markets that are rapidly changing and really contrast significantly from just, say, 5 years ago, pre-pandemic, when sampling markets were rather static and not a lot of things going on. So pretty exciting stuff happening right now. We'll then go into our current offering, discuss current products that we sell, and some of the accessories for those products that allow a standard product to be adapted into a specific application that's might be outside of its realm of typical operation of its specifications. Jeff will cover some of that information. And then finally, Jeff will share some of his immense expertise in talking about do's, don'ts, and troubleshooting of samplers if you have issues. First, today we're going to talk about our history a little bit as a company. So thank you again for joining us. ISCO was established as ISCO Inc. way back in 1958. Here in Lincoln, Nebraska is where we're HQ'd, and we've been here the whole time. So we're a stable company and have been located in Lincoln. A lot of great people working here and with a lot of experience doing what we do. In 1969, ISCO founded a separate division called the Environmental Division, whose focus was really on water and wastewater. And then that division really took off and gained some momentum with the Clean Water Act of 1972. 1972 was a long time ago, but certainly it was a landmark piece of legislation. Many of you, some of you may remember one of the catalysts for that was the Cuyahoga River in northern Ohio actually catching fire due to industrial discharges into the river that were unregulated. Something had to be done. So wonderful thing, the Clean Water Act, and it really paved the way for cleaner water all across the United States, and was the genesis that grew the ISCO Environmental and Water Division that we have today. We were acquired by Teledyne Technologies back in 2004. Hard to believe it's been 20 years now. And again, we're located in Lincoln, Nebraska. So when you hear about ISCO, we are really a true manufacturer. We're not just an assembly house. You know, we don't just slap a label on a product that says made in America and where, you know, it's parts are just assembled here. We do our own manufacturing, and we do injection and rotational molding. You see one of the photos down there, someone doing some injection molding to create a top cover for one of our GLS samplers. We have our own in-house engineering design and manufacturing engineering teams, all seasoned professionals who've been doing this for a long, long time. And our main focus is quality, not just quantity. So everything we do goes into trying to develop and constantly improve our products for quality and durability, because the markets that we serve are challenging, and the instruments have a desperate need to be ruggedized so that they can handle the wear and tear of daily activity in rigorous field environments. One of the big strengths of our company is the elite customer support that we give to our customers. We have a full-time staff of applications and service product support people. When you add up the number of years that they've been with this company, stunningly, it's over 300 years. Jeff is a big part of that. He's been with us for over 20 and has done an outstanding job in that group over that time. We offer extended benefits and dedicated customer support managers for our top tier customers. So if we're a big part of your operation, then you're a big part of ours. And so we offer some extended benefits on that front. Talk to your local representative about what it takes to qualify for that. And then speaking of local representatives, really, and I've been here at ISCO for 25 years and been in the industry for 35. And I would say beyond the shadow of a doubt, even if I didn't work for ISCO, that ISCO has the industry's best manufacturers rep network. 26 independent companies covering the United States for us, and with an average tenure of over 20 years selling Teledyne ISCO products. Many of these are multi-generational family companies, which really are steeped in ISCO and know our products as well as anybody in our manufacturing facility. So the fundamental goal of the Clean Water Act was to stop pollutants from being discharged into waterways and to improve water quality, to determine and also, of course, to determine the effectiveness of methods which had been implemented to reduce existing pollutants. How do we gather information on water quality? Well, there's a number of different ways today that didn't exist back in the early 70s. Certainly you can gather information with remote sensors related to water quality parameters, but really first and foremost, you have to have the physical evidence. You have to have that liquid water, so you got to go and collect those samples for analysis. After those samples are collected, you have to properly package them. You have to label them for laboratory testing to determine the pollutant levels that you're looking for. There's a specific process, a chain of custody, if you will, that's critical to demonstrate how those samples get collected and then tracked through the system in the event that there's ever litigation or other things, other legal things related to what was found in the content of those samples. It's very important to have that chain of custody documented and in place. The quality of the results of that sampling depend upon a number of factors, and just a handful of those factors include, say, the placement of the sample intake or the sampler strainer. Certainly the frequency and the number of samples collected, depending on the nature of the water being sampled and how it's being discharged. These are all factors. Certainly proper preservation is critical if you're looking for certain types of compounds or what have you. Sometimes the sample bottles need to be prefixed in order to properly preserve. Usually we're talking about refrigeration at a bare minimum, and that's at 4 degrees Celsius or less. And then finally, another critical factor is the people in the laboratory. Proper laboratory analysis technique is absolutely critical. The field technicians do a great job collecting samples, and they deliver it in an appropriate amount of time and properly preserved to the lab. And the lab person doesn't do the actual lab test correctly, you're still going to have a problem. So there's a lot of good things, a lot of things that need to happen in order to come away with good quality data from your sampling. The bottom line really, though, is the most important rule of collecting water samples is the sampler must always represent the source. And this means that the sampling method must consistently provide representative samples. Repeatability and consistency are really the keys here. So if you think about it, you know, there's 60 minutes in an hour and 24 hours in a day. That's 1,440 minutes every day. If you send an operator out into the plant to just grab a sample with a pole and a bottle on it, that's a 1 minute window of time. That's 1 in 1,440. The beauty of the automatic sampler is its repeatability. It's consistently delivering a fixed volume at a known interval. So, you know, obviously the more of those data points, the more of those samples that you take, regardless of whether or not you have wide variations in stuff in your sample stream, you're collecting all of that. So you're getting a good average, it's repeatable, and it's consistent. So we'll move on to samplers and sampling, talk a little bit about that. First of all, the history. These are just some photos, and thanks to my friend Steve McManus for providing these. Steve is our senior water quality support technician, and he has a lot of these old photos. And we have some of these instruments still in our museum at our manufacturing facility in Lincoln. But the photo in the upper right, or in the upper left, excuse me, it was the first ever sampler developed back in 72. And that, as you look at it, you can see that's something that would really be on a counter in a laboratory somewhere rather than anything that would go out into the field. Certainly not capable of going down into the manhole. In the bottom right corner is the model, the classic model, I believe it's 1580. We called it the Tupperware sampler because the main controller was in a Tupperware case with a Tupperware lid on it, and you'd have to burp it in order to keep the moisture out of there. The model 1680 is in your bottom left. You know, that's, you know, you got your mechanical diodes and a variety of other, you know, a purely mechanical device, but a real workhorse. There's still some of those out in the field working today. I saw one less than a year ago, and dating myself here a bit, but that was the first ISCO sampler that I actually programmed. And then the model 2700 is when we started moving into push button keypads and microprocessors and such. So the 2700 was an evolutionary step forward, and really the grandfather of the units that we're selling today. So what about our markets? Where are we selling these days? Well, certainly our traditional markets are, you know, wastewater treatment plant operations, both on the influent and effluent side, but also within the plant itself. You know, sometimes you'll see a sampler at the end of the primary clarification process. Sometimes you'll see one at the end of the secondary clarification, and sometimes even over in the aeration basins or places like that. So these can be used internally for process control or for biomonitoring within plants for quarterly compliance, as well as just influent and effluent stuff. Probably the most versatile users of our samplers, and certainly our portable samplers, are the source control and pretreatment people. You know, they are the ones that are monitoring the industries to make sure that the water that they turn out into the collection system is within their discharge limits and does not adversely impact the biology at the wastewater treatment plants, which is absolutely critical. And then, of course, industrial process control and compliance. This is the flip side of the coin to the source control and pretreatment people. These are the actual industrial people. They're environmental engineers, oftentimes at industrial facilities that are required to keep an eye on the water that they're discharging to any given municipal publicly owned treatment works. And it's in the best interest of those industries to do some of their own sampling and monitoring, if for no other reason for their own internal quality control, but also for comparative samples and split samples and you know, comparison data with the regulators who they work with. Other traditional markets, certainly areas that have been growth markets for us in the past and remain very active today, are surface and stormwater. This is probably the most widely varying field, a wide degree of applications, and we do everything from MS4 stormwater compliance work. In the photo in the upper right there, you see a photo of LA River. For those of you who follow weather nationally like I do, you know that it's been a pretty wet year on the West Coast. The LA River there in this photo is shown at a minimum flow. It was a raging torrent not too long ago. So busy stormwater season out on the West Coast this year. Urban stormwater, certainly we're talking about round, you know, reinforced concrete pipe or potentially corrugated metal pipes might be an application that's fairly common. We go into natural streams and rivers. We've got outstanding lift capability, so we can put our samplers up and away from any flood zone and still be able to have a robust enough pump to deliver a sample that's representative of what's happening down in that stream or river or what have you. Our units are used for TMDL formulation and compliance. What's a TMDL? That stands for total maximum daily loading. That's basically an EPA and then state administered profile, if you will, or I guess like a DNA profile for any given water body. They want to take samples out of that, look at what's in it, decide, what's in there that shouldn't be, and then establish limits based upon, who's discharging to it, whether they be a point source or a non-point source. The idea is to limit the amount of sediment loading and to optimize the application of fertilizers and herbicides to assist soil conservation methods, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So ag runoff work is something we do a lot of. That's kind of what you see in that photo in the bottom right. We've worked with many universities, especially here in the Midwestern United States, to do studies related to optimization of fertilizer placement, timing with rain. This involved, putting drain tile and also doing some flow metering, or putting in flumes, as you see in the photo here, to do some flow metering. So you have flow paste samples, not necessarily just time-based stuff. All fascinating science. And then another rapidly emerging sampler market, and this is just really recently evolved over the last 3 or 4 years based upon that little thing we called the COVID-19 pandemic, is wastewater-based epidemiology and wastewater-based surveillance. Samplers are frequently used by government and university officials. Also, municipalities are splitting their samplers or their samples with health officials for early detection of COVID-19 and other pathogens in raw wastewater. They found that this can give an early indication for identifying increases in spikes in cases and identifying potential hotspots where you have large concentrations of people infected. And it gives you a reaction time before a large outbreak can occur. We're even seeing more and more nowadays samplers being used for monitoring of illicit drugs in wastewater, oftentimes at correctional facilities. That has grown exponentially just in the last year or two. Wastewater-based epidemiology is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. The CDC operates a real-time COVID data tracker, and there's hundreds of communities nationwide that upload data to that on a daily and a weekly basis. Many communities operate their own local dashboards. Tempe, Arizona has an outstanding one. There's a screen capture. I believe that one is from Tempe. There's Guadalupe in the southwest corner. Yeah, so that's down in Arizona. Lots of communities doing this work. Incredibly critically important stuff. And ISCO is proud to be part of the WEF Small Utility Assistance Program. This is a cooperative program that was developed by WEF and the CDC to promote wastewater surveillance for early detection of COVID and other pathogens. Not all, municipalities out there are big and have deep pockets and can afford either personnel or equipment to go out and do this intensive sampling for wastewater-based pathogens. And so the WEF, in its wisdom, has decided to, and ISCO was certainly lucky to be a partner with WEF, proud to do so, to provide samplers free of charge to communities that qualify while supplies are available. And we've just now launched the third phase of this program, and another whole wave of communities will be receiving samplers to do exactly this kind of work. Probably the most recently blooming or growing sampler micro market, if you will, is related to PFAS. These are what they call forever chemicals that were developed by DuPont and 3M back in the late 30s, early 40s, and into the 50s. Initially, a lot of these chemicals were developed as the chemical industry boomed during World War II. These compounds are used in all different kinds of things, from paints to nonstick cookware to pesticides to even fast food packaging. And they're extremely resilient, and they do not degrade easily in the natural environment. As they do slowly, they can percolate through the soil with moisture, get into the soil. They can get into groundwater. They can build up in the food chain. So that bioaccumulation of trace amounts of these chemicals can, over time, cause health issues. Detection and testing limits that EPA are working on right now are down in the range of parts per trillion. So this is an incredibly important thing that EPA is driving, and that ISCO has done a great deal of work on to stay on the cutting edge as this important national health issue continues to evolve. What we've learned is that there are significant environmental and health concerns related to PFAS. Again, they're slow compounds. They break down very slowly in the environment. They have the ability to move through soils and contaminate water. And you'll see that the life forms in any given ecosystem that are at the top of that food chain tend to be the ones where most of this bioaccumulates in the highest concentration. So certainly in fish. And then, oh, by the way, if the humans are consuming some of that fish, it will start to build up in humans as well. So a little graphic there showing some of the things that have excessive PFAS concentrations can contribute to in terms of human health risk. And this is so popular that Hollywood's jumped on board, of course, and so PFAS is in the news and in the media. Again, EPA is working on a drinking water standard now, and they're doing extensive testing across the country to try to find out. The last estimate I heard was that there were approaching potentially up to 70 million people in the United States currently that have some PFAS in a detectable level of PFAS in their drinking water. That doesn't mean that it's an excess of a limit or we should all stop drinking water out of the tap immediately, but it does mean that this is an issue that is very widespread, and EPA is still trying to get its hands all the way around it. This class action lawsuit that was brought on behalf of 70,000 residents is what the movie Dark Waters is all about, and that suit was settled for $671 million. That's million with a capital M. Unbelievable amount of money, and certainly gives you a little bit of an indication of how potentially widespread and serious this problem is. Right now, EPA has a strategic roadmap to deal with PFAS. Their approach is first and foremost to take a long look at the life cycle of PFAS, because again, it does take quite some time to break down and get into the environment. So they want to get ahead of the problem. And that involves really limiting PFAS in the environment as much as they can by going to the source, the manufacturers of this, having them minimize the use of it where they can, and then certainly engage, because these are chemicals that are used for a wide variety of things, so they're not going to go away overnight. But to get those agencies, those companies using those and creating those chemicals to do a better job of cleaning that water up and removing that stuff from their process before they discharge anything into the environment. They have to hold those polluters accountable. They have to ensure that there is science-based decision-making, that we're not doing knee-jerk reactions based on people's concerns about health. We need the data, and that's where sampling comes in. We have to prioritize protection of disadvantaged communities because they don't have the resources necessarily to be able to do everything they need to do to make sure that the monitoring is being done. And then we have to support, EPA in moving to establish strict limits on emissions. There's a link here provided in the event that you want to read more on this. So really, as we wrap up the PFAS market, we want to look at, there's two categories of approved materials. The first category is the items and materials that physically come in direct contact with that liquid sample. We need to make sure that these items and materials do not contain any PFAS in them at all because of the threat for cross contamination into the sample, and we're talking parts per trillion here, folks, so it wouldn't take much to get contamination. So category 1 items come in contact with the sample. Category 2 items are items and materials that will not come into direct contact with the liquid sample, and these should be avoided if possible unless they're known to be PFAS free, just because of the risk of potential proximity exposure. Just some examples, category 1, direct contact, manual grab sampling. Obviously your sample container, the rod, the pole, the zip tie, the bottles, all these things come into direct contact with the water. Category 2 includes stuff like the sampler bottle itself, the cooler, the ice pack, the gloves that you're wearing, any jackets that the person in the field is wearing, footwear, waders, you name it. All of those things could potentially contain PFAS, so you have to be very, very careful when you're working to collect PFAS samples that you do this the right way. And again, ISCO tends to, we try to be at the forefront of all of these new emerging markets related to sampling. So the good news is that ISCO has developed a PFAS kit, and this kit can be ordered from us. There's information from the link below, but basically it gives you all the required items in one package except the main sampler itself, which you can get from us, of course. And there's no need to place separate orders or order separate parts. All the materials within this kit are approved for PFAS sampling and based on latest available guidelines from EPA. And they're verified in third-party lab to ensure that there's no additional absorption of PFAS that would give background contamination. And we're using disposable sampler bags. We find that from an integrity standpoint, that helps us to avoid contamination, and it's a time-saving effort, reducing potential decontamination time for bottles, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the torch over to my friend Jeff to talk about sampler products.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Again, yeah, my name is Jeff Vandehoef, here with Teledyne ISCO. I'm in the product support group. Going on 35 years I've been here, so I've been working on these samplers for a very long time. Some of the product offerings we have here for the sampler, the first one is kind of our base model, is our GLS sampler. It's a portable type sampler. It is a one bottle configuration sampler. You cannot have multiple bottles. It's just a one bottle configuration. Very lightweight, small diameter, economically priced, used in, like Bob says, pre-treatment, storm waters, WBE, WDS. It's a GLS great little sampler is what we call it. It's kind of the base entry model with it. They're using this a lot in the WBE and the COVID testing. It seems to be a very popular model for that. I think the WEF ones were also the GLS sampler, as well. Great little product. It is limited to just one bottle, and it is a very good little sampler. Next one we have is our 6712. So we have a 6712, which is our portable version, and then we have a 6712 FR, which stands for fiberglass refrigerated. So we have a portable version, and we also have a stationary refrigerated version of this sampler. A lot more complex than what the GLS is. It has a lot more options and stuff that you can have on it. You can have multiple bottle configurations with it, or you can do a single bottle configuration. You can do either or. 1, 4, 8, 12, and 24 are different bottle options. They range. We can have plastic or glass bottles in a lot of those options. The pump is a little bit more powerful than what the GLS offers. It's about a couple more foot ahead that you can actually pump straight up. It has accessories that you can have. One of the main accessories is the flow modules. The flow modules, you can have like a flow meter and a sampler all in one. So you can record flow, you can pace off of the flow, you can enable, disable programs, all based off of any readings that are coming into the unit. The different flow modules that we have, it's the 700 series is what we call it. We have a 701, which is a pH module. We have a 720, which is a pressure level sensing module. 730 is going to be our bubbler module. It has an air system in there, uses a bubble to read the depth in there. The 750 is actually an area velocity module. So we have a pressure sensor that measures depth, and we have a velocity sensor that actually measures the speed of the water. And from there, we can calculate flow. We also have a 780 module, which is a 4 to 20 milliamp input. So any source, any other probes or anything like that would work on a 4 to 20 milliamp signal, you can actually bring into the unit, and you can store that data, and you can pace off of that data. You can do anything you need to off of that data with your sampling programs. Smart monitoring capabilities the 6712 has. There are other SONs. SDI 12 is a communications protocol that the sampler actually speaks, so you can bring in other types of SONs. Multi-parameter SONs, you can bring them into the unit, and again, you can trigger, store the data, sample off of any of those parameters that you bring in. It is also compatible with our FlowLink software, so you can actually retrieve the data, look at the data, do whatever you need, edit the data, make reports and everything like that with our FlowLink software, so it is compatible with that. One of the best accessories that we have with it is actually you can have a digital cell phone on it, so you can be out in remote locations, so you can actually access it, you can call it, you can download your data remotely, you can trigger it remotely. It also sends alarms and everything by the modem, tells you, hey, my sampling routine has started, my sampling routine is done. Errors and stuff like that you can do in there. You can even do like thresholds, my level. If you have a module in there, say my level has gone over 10 feet, it can send you a text message that said, hey, I'm in this alarm condition. So very versatile, very unique sampler. The 6712 is the portable version. We have a compact and we have a full-size version of that. The compact's just slightly smaller, slightly less weight unit. The 6712 FR is actually, that's the one picture here on the bottom right. That one actually is a permanent AC powered unit with a refrigerator built on it too. But both of them have the same functionality capability. All the accessories will work on both units. Next sampler is our newest one that we actually have out. That is our Blizzard sampler. So the Blizzard took the place of the Glacier and the Avalanche, which we no longer produce. The Blizzard sampler is it's a portable refrigerated sampler. It can run off of AC or DC, so you can put it in remote locations. It runs off of a large 100 amp hour deep cycle marine battery. Generally, you can get 24 to 48 hours of runtime, of refrigeration runtime off of that battery. The comes in 1, 4, or 14 bottle configurations. You can have any one of those configurations. If you need a portable sampler that actually cools the sample down, to the 3 to 4C, this is a great unit for that. The controller is actually pretty much the same capabilities of what the 6712 controller has that I mentioned before. So any of that functionality with the modems and the remoteness and the SONs, you can actually bring that all into the to the Blizzard, and you can have all that same functionality, and you can have refrigeration on it too. So that one is our newest sampler that we offer. The next one is probably our most popular refrigerated sampler is the 5800. This is either a composite or a sequential refrigeration unit. You can either have one bottle or you can have multiple bottles. It's a very nice, strong, rugged case, LDPE recyclable body. The pump is similar to what the pump is in the 6712. You get actually up to about 28 feet of head on there, generally around 2 to 3 feet line velocity on there, so you get a really good strong purge, lots of good movement of the water through the lines. Actually comes with a 2-year standard bumper to bumper warranty, so anything goes wrong with that thing within 2 years, it is still covered under warranty. It stores actual temperature and sample data. You can actually get that with like a TerraTerm or a terminal emulation type program and a communications cable. You can actually download that and keep that data if you need it for your records. There's also alarms that'll actually output as well too. So if you have pump problems, distributor problems, your bottle's full, your program starts, program done, it can alert you remotely for that. So great unit, really cools really well. One of the picture here is our 24 bottle setup. Great distributor system, great bottles. It's a really nice, very dependable unit. The 5800 it's a modular design unit. So that just means you can replace all of the parts individually on there. So you can pretty much replace everything on there and have a brand new sampler. Makes it a little bit cheaper, makes it last longer, for you. Everything can pretty much be done in the field. The most maintenance people don't have issues replacing the whole refrigeration sled or anything on there. It is they come with instructions. We also have videos. I'll show you the link to the videos later here. We actually have YouTube videos out there that shows how to replace refrigeration module, how to replace pumps, how to do pretty much anything on there. So I can pretty much fix anything now just watching a YouTube video. So it's a great resource to go out there. It makes people feel a lot more confident when they actually go out there to do these repairs themselves. So the refrigeration sled assembly, again, that's all modular. If you have to replace that, you really don't need any refrigeration knowledge. You can just go out and replace it all along the videos. fairly easy to do. Pump housing, the whole pump assembly. So everything to do with the pump is just bolted onto the side of the unit, 6 screws, take it off, hey, replace your whole pump assembly. Very easy to do. Same with the controller keypad. If your keypad goes bad, gets damaged or anything like that, you can just replace that yourself. Very easy to do. Power supply in there too, has its own contained power supply in there that controls refrigeration, supplies power for the pump and the panel. All that's easily replaced. There's independent sensors in there too that actually mount on the cooling coils and inside the unit to monitor air temperatures. Those are all very easily replaced as well. Next slide here is the sampler accessories. So some of the accessories that we have available that will work with pretty much all of our samplers are ProPack bags. Bob mentioned a little bit of that when he was talking about the PFAS sampling. We have a Pro hanger, sample chambers, pressurized line, liquid level. There's modems that works with some of the samplers. We actually are now into cellular service. We will actually provide you the cell service for the modem. We contact with Verizon and we actually do the cell service. It's like a yearly subscription for us. Since we have so many samplers out there that I sell, it's usually cheaper to go through us. We'll go over different strainers and we'll have remote pump type options as well. So ProPack bags, as Bob kind of saying, what they are is a single-use bag. You can have it for either single bottles or the 24 bottle 1 liter bags. They are an LDPE, so low density polyethylene. They won't contaminate or cross-contaminate your samples. If you're using the same bottle over and over, you can contaminate the bottle and that can cross-contaminate your samples. So these are one-time use disposable, so you're not getting any cross-contamination. They're tough, thick 3 mil plastic, so very durable. Heat seam welded, they don't leak, they don't break. It's similar to stuff they use for like medical waste. There's an area right on the bag where you can actually write the date, the time, when you took the sample, what the sampler was, where locations, nice stuff, so you can label it so you don't lose track of where your samples were from. There's also a screw-on cap. You can see the cap on top of that blue holder over there. It seals it. You just take that whole unit out, put a whole new unit in, replace it, and then take these back to the lab. Next one we have is our modems. So the modems we can actually use with our Blizzard samplers and with either of the 6712, the refrigerated or the portable 6712. Like I said, yeah, you can, it does text alarms. You can start it remotely. You can call it and access it. You can actually even call it and do all the programming that like you can do from the keypad. You can all do that remotely through the modem. So you basically just deploy it and then you have remote access to do to it whatever you need to do. And we're also starting to sell, like I said, the iCell program. It's a new program for us where you can get the modem and the actual service all in one package. iCell is all through Verizon service, and basically it's a yearly fee that you pay. Since we have so many modems, it's generally way cheaper to go through us than to get your own cell service. And it's just a yearly subscription. We'll let you know when the subscription is going up and everything like that. So it's a really nice hassle-free way to do it. We actually test it all here before it all goes out to make sure everything works, before we even send it out to you in the field. So next accessory that almost every sampling site needs is some type of strainer to filter out the solids in the stream. If you have paper in there or rags or anything in the actual stream, sometimes that can clog up your tube. If you have a strainer device here, you can actually filter out all that so you can always get an actual sample so it doesn't actually clog your line. The most common one is top left, our stainless steel polypropylene strainer. We have the same version in stainless steel. We have that same version in CPVC. We have a Teflon coated one, which is the PFAS coated one, so you don't want to use that in your PFAS sampling. It actually contains PFAS, the Teflon does. We also have a low flow strainer there. If you have like very, only 1 inch to 2 inches of water, you want that lower profile strainer so you can actually get a sample. You're not getting air into your lines. And if you have very, very low, probably 1 inch or lower, then we have our ultra low flow strainer where you can actually get a good sample with very low sample depths there. So a whole bunch, 6 different options at least there for our stringers. Now we're going to get into some good things to consider when you're actually considering your sampling sites. We'll actually get into some troubleshooting stuff and common things that we see go wrong. I'm in product support. I take a lot of calls from people, and these are the most common things that we probably see, when we're troubleshooting customer sites and customer issues. First thing, when you're considering, when you have to sample, the first thing I always consider is which sampler am I going to use for that? There's different versions out there, and according to your needs, what you need. Next thing, what you want to check is location. Where is this sampler going? We'll also go over our power options, the common failures that we kind of see, and then we actually will show you the troubleshooting resources, phone numbers, emails, YouTube channels, where you can actually go to do all of this. So which sampler do I choose? So basically this is the need. So this is what you need in your sampler. So do I need refrigeration? Do I have to actually preserve this sample? Am I sampling for organics? That's usually the main reason of why you have to refrigerate your sampler. How many bottles do I need? What bottle configuration do I need? Do I need just one composite, or do I need to split this up into 24 separate type samples? Power considerations. What do I have for power? Do I have AC power? Is this going to be on a battery? Is this going to be in a remote location? All that kind of stuff you need to consider when you're actually figuring out what sampler you want. Head height. So the GLS can go up to actually about 26 foot of head, and the 67s and the Avalanche and the 58s can go up to about 28 feet of head on there. So it does make a difference. If you have a higher head height one, then you probably want to go with the ones that are capable of lifting higher. Is this going to be portable? Am I going to be moving this around to all different locations, or is it going to be permanent where it's always going to be here, always at this place? Those are another considerations you want to think of. Accessories, what accessories do I need? Do I need, a flow module in this? Do I not need a flow module? Am I just doing time-based sampling? All of those are things you really need to consider. What options, what accessories do I need with this? Location, definitely you always have to consider, where is this sampler going? Am I going on the side of a bridge? Am I going on the side of a road? Am I going on a river and a stream? Have to kind of consider all of those things when you're picking a sampler. Another thing you always want to consider is, do you have a level surface to actually do this? Do you have a level place to actually hang the sampler? If the sampler is like, sitting on a hill or anything like that, well, wind comes up and blow it away. They are round, they will roll downhill. A level pad is always nice, especially if you have like a 24 or a multiple bottle system. Sometimes you can get drift of the sample of the water as you're actually going into the bottle. Sometimes you can actually miss the bottles if you don't have it nice and level pad on there. So always want a nice level flat place to put it. The security of the sampler. Is this in a high traffic area where there's a lot of people? If there's crime, people can come in and steal the sample. They can actually tamper with the sample, so think you're getting actually a true representation of what you're sampling. So security is a big thing you definitely want to consider. There's locks and chains and cables you can put around it, anchored to a tree. There's also like storm boxes that you can get, big storm boxes where you can actually have your flow meter in there, your sampler in there. It closes, it locks up. It's a big thing that somebody can't just come and carry away and take off. Locked access to it, so they can't get to that. So storm boxes, you may have to do that. How close you are to the water source, that's another thing you always want to consider. If you're really, really far away from the water source, well, we may not be able to pump that far. We can go quite a far ways with our line, but generally you want to try to get as close to the water as you can. That helps with your battery life, that helps with maintenance, tubing life, pump life. We always try to get it as close as we possibly can. So, different power options that we have and offer. We have AC power options where it's just a converter. We convert from AC to 12 volts DC that the sampler will run on. We have like a AC powered that has like a backup batteries in it. So it kind of works like a UPS. So if you lose power, then it will switch automatically to the batteries. We have lead acid, and we also have an NiCad type style. The lead acid and the NiCad, generally, you can get about 100 samples out of each one of those. Great options. There's different types, chargers and stuff. You can get them as well too. We also have a bigger, almost like a car style battery, like a 45 amp hour, so you can get quite a bit more time and use out of it. We also recommend that you can use deep cycle green batteries. That's like a big car battery or a trolling motor battery that you can get at Menards or Home Depot or any local retailer. It's a big battery if you're putting it in a remote location, stuff like that. Other things to consider are solar. There's solar options for power and stuff like that too. So if you're in a remote location and you can't get to this very often, well, a big battery like that with a big solar panel will keep it powered and charged and ready to go for when your storm happens or when your sampling event actually happens. Now we'll get into the parts, common failures that we see. Like I said, I've been almost 35 years. I've been here talking on the phones, talking with people. So I've seen pretty much everything that has ever happened. Some of the most common failures that we see on this, a lot of calls that we get, a lot of emails that we get, there's problems with the pump tubing. So people, I'll see they'll put the pump tubing in backwards. They'll hook the lines up backwards. So then we'll pump water up, and then we purge, and then we pump, and that's not how it's supposed to go. So you're always supposed to purge the line out, so you clear the line out below bubbles at your source, then it brings water up, puts it into the bottle one time, and then it clears the line out afterwards too, so you don't have a cross-contamination of samples there. The orientation of the pump tubing, the proper pump tubing, there's other brands out there that claim they'll work with ISCO samplers. We can have problems, not using the ISCO tubing, so you always probably want to use the ISCO tubing. The units were designed around the tubing, so even small differences between tubings can cause problems. So all of that, we see that all the time in our samplers. Suction lines as well too. All of our units are designed to be used with a harder, stiffer type suction line. Sometimes people use the softer silicone tubing for the suction line, and that can cause problems with our liquid detect system. It causes problems with your volume, getting air in the lines, clogging, pinching the lines. So we always want to harder, rigid type tubings. If you can't use ISCO tubing, that's going to lessen any type of problems you're going to have. See that a lot where people have problems. They switch to our tubing, and then the problems go away. Everything just works as designed. Distributor jams, don't see a lot of distributor jam issues. The most common problems that we see that cause distributor jams is when you put the bottles actually in the base, or you actually put the bottles in there, if you don't get the bottles pushed all the way down, and then you don't get them secured with the straps, the bottles can rise up, and then when the distributor arm moves over the top of it, it actually hits the bottle, and then it'll throw you a message, throw you a distributor jam message. So yeah, the most common one we see is just the bottles not pushed down in the right, all the way down, so the distributor arm will clear it. It's only about 1/4 of an inch clearance between the actual distributor arm and the top of the bottle. They do it when they want it that close, so you don't get cross-contamination, so you don't get water splashing from one bottle to the other and everything. So it's a very small clearance that you have there. Another thing we see with distributor jams is when you're putting the actual tubing into the distributor arm, you want the tubing actually flush with the end of the distributor arm. If the tubing sticks out past, then like I said, we only have about 1/4 inch clearance. Sometimes that tubing then can hit the top of the bottle, and then you'll see distributor jams like that. So you just rearrange the tubing so it's flush with the end of that distributor arm, and then you're good. It doesn't hit the bottles, you're good to go. Have a lot of power issues with things. These things are used in remote locations, so a lot of times you're using like the deep cycle marine batteries or car batteries, big motorcycle batteries, that kind of stuff. If you hook the polarity up wrong, you see that quite a bit. It can cause damage to the sampler. It's usually not a lot of damage, but it usually requires to be sent back in here to the factory to fix. So definitely always want to watch your polarities when you're hooking up those samplers. red to positive, black to negative. Also, I've seen where people have different types of power source or batteries that just don't have enough current, don't have enough power to actually run the samplers. Even if the chargers go bad, and then basically it's enough to power up the sampler, and you can go through the programming and everything like that. But when you actually try to run the sampler, then you get power fails because the batteries just, or the power source just doesn't have enough capacity. So undersized power source to reverse polarity are the main common things we see with different power sources. So you want to be careful when you're speccing out power sources for these. Usually best to use the ones right from us. That way you know it's rated for the unit. Strainers, main problems we see with strainers is if they don't totally submerge the strainer in the stream, or if they kink the line that goes to the strainer. Sometimes the strainers can get covered in sediment, and then you're pulling actually sediment up and it just clogs the line. If the strainer is partially submerged actually in the stream, you'll get air and water. So as you're pumping the water up through the tubing, you'll see stripes, you see air, water, air, water. You don't want to see that. You always just want to see one continuous stream of water. If you're not getting all water in that line, it can cause problems with your sample accuracy. The repeatability is not there. You don't get the same sample every single time. And sometimes that can cause you actually to overfill your jugs and get too much. Sometimes it'll cause you not to get any water at all. So you'll get liquid detect errors where you're not, getting liquid up to the samplers. Troubleshooting resources. So if you have questions or if you want to email, talk about your applications, we have different resources here for you. The manual is always the best thing for each one of these samplers. You can actually go to Teledyne ISCO.com, go into the water wastewater section, and there's a manuals tab there for all of our different products. ISCO water support at teledyne.com. That's an email address. You can actually, if you have questions on anything of the samplers, if you're having problems, if you want to help design a new system or trying to figure out what sample you want for your applications, just give us an email, send us an email to that. It's a group email address. There's 6 of us that pull from that. Generally, you're going to get an answer that very same day when you send it in there. It may be, the next day at the latest, but most of the time it's a very quick turnaround time, and we'll get you an answer very quick. So there are people actually there. If you haven't actually talked to somebody, I think we're one of the only manufacturers out there that actually have people you can talk to. We don't have any type of artificial intelligence on troubleshooting like that. It's all people that you actually can talk to. There's 6 guys that actually man that line. Our hours are 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time. You can call that number and get anyone person to talk to. They'll be able to help you with your problems. That's at 866-298-6174. Generally, our wait time is less than a minute and a half. So most of the time you're getting in right to us. You don't even have to wait on hold much while we have people available all the time. Next, you can, like I said earlier, you can actually go to YouTube and actually just search Teledyne ISCO on YouTube, and you can find all of our sampling videos. There's programming videos, there's sampler troubleshooting videos, there's how to replace pumps, how to replace refrigeration modules. They're adding to this all the time with new videos and everything like that. You can go on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We all have all accounts there on the screen. So you can use any one of those resources for us to contact us. Users here, you can use the chat function, and we will answer any questions that you have.
Well, thank you, Jeff and Bob, for providing this great webinar. And as far as questions, please utilize the questions function, because this will allow us to make sure we cover all the incoming questions. Sometimes through chat, they can get lost. So please utilize questions. Well, Thank you again. And we have several questions that have been entered. I believe Jeff is going to take the first one, so I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Okay.
Jeff, oh, go
Yep.
ahead. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Bob. Thank you.
sure, and I'll go ahead and take it. Jeff may be having some audio difficulties here. The question relates to vacuum samplers. Actually, it's a two-part question from Carol. Thank you, Carol, for your question. The first question is regarding vacuum samplers, have they been discontinued? And the answer to that question is yes. For a variety of reasons, ISCO is no longer actively manufacturing and selling vacuum sampler versions. However, there are a number of vacuum samplers that we've manufactured in the past. These we would refer to as legacy ISCO products, much the same as some of our older peristaltic pump samplers and some of our older flow meters. We do maintain an inventory of support parts for all of those vacuum samplers that we had once manufactured. And that inventory is fairly well stocked. So if you have an existing vacuum sampler that was manufactured by ISCO and you need parts for it, please reach out to us. You can check also on the online store and do a quick search there, or check with your local representative, and we should be able to get the parts that you need to repair any vacuum sampler unit that you have. The second part of the question is, in the past, you've noticed that for foamy liquids, the liquid sensor, the liquid detector on the sampler can collect too much sample. I think Jeff touched on this, or not enough sample, by the way. I think Jeff touched on this earlier when he talked about entrained air in the sample. It's really important to locate your suction line and strainer or the end of the suction tube in an area where it's going to have proper mixing to get a representative sample, where there isn't too much aggressive mixing or turbulence, which could cause entrained air, and that will potentially throw off the liquid detector. Okay.
Okay, Bob, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, I can. Yeah.
Okay, got it going on there. So I have a couple questions here too. First question is, do you have an operating procedure or a tutorial on the setting up the modem for a sampler? In the manual, actually, for the 6712 sampler, we do have an operating procedure on how to actually hook up to the modem, how to connect up to it with Teledyne, how to program and everything like that. So that is all set up in the modem, in the manual for that. If you do have problems or you can't figure it out, or even if you can't find it in the manual, you can give us a call at that 866-298-6174. One of us there can help you, step you through the process, if you need to do that as well. What about custom programming in the 5800? Looks like they want to try to run two different programs, kind of auto run two different programs. Don't really have that functionality in the 5800. You have to select one program and run that, and it's always just going to run that one program. If you want to select the second program, you have to go in and select that second program and then run that one. It won't automatically switch back and forth between the two. We don't have that functionality on there, but you can program up to 4 different programs, but you have to manually switch between the 2 or the 4.
Jeff, it looks like we have a question related to calibrating samplers for sample volume, not just the GLS samplers, but the others as well. My answer to that would be the calibration process is basically you make sure that your suction line length and your head values are entered correctly. You tell it to take whatever volume of liquid it is you're wanting to take. Then the calibration procedure is it will then take a sample. You enter using a graduated cylinder. You catch that liquid, you measure it physically, and then put in the amount of liquid that was delivered. It'll look at that volume compared to the volume that you had programmed in, and it will just adjust its pump times accordingly. Do you want to add anything to that, Jeff?
No, that's about right. It'll ask you, hey, how much water did you deliver? And then you just put in what you got, and then it compensates, for either more or less. And you can usually get it on within plus or minus 10 mils. You can generally get your sample within that volume. So again, if you're having problems, call us from the unit when you're doing it. We can step you through it and figure it out. But it's a pretty simple process. So. Another question here. Can we use an external pump to for higher head heights, anything greater than like the 28 feet that we generally do with the 67s and the Blizzards? Yes, we actually have what we call a remote pump. The remote pump is a second pump that you actually put down closer to the source. And that pump actually picks the water up and actually pumps it or pushes it up towards the other sampler. And they kind of run in tandem together. So we call that a remote pump is what we call that. And you can go to higher head heights more than that. You can push water uphill farther than you can pull it uphill. So yes, we do have an option like that. You can use it in conjunction with other pumps. Generally, it's a setup. It's a special application that we can set up with your sampler. We can use that with the 5800 samplers, and we can do that with the Blizzard or the 6712s. We have those options. So.
I've got one here from our good friend Doug out in Oregon. Doug's asking, will the 5800 sampler communicate with FlowLink? The 5800 sampler does not store a large quantity of information in its memory. It's going to store sample event, sample time, some temperature data, but that is not data that can be extracted using FlowLink. There's a communications cable that is specifically adapted for the 5800 because of its 16-pin connector. And I believe, again, Jeff, fact check me on this one, but I believe that a terminal emulation program is used to extract that data from the 5800 and not FlowLink.
Correct. We use like TerraTerm or Hyperterminal, that kind of program. You can use that along with that COM cable to get the data out of it. You can get those programs free on our website as well. So.
Outstanding. Got another one here. Do you have a cold weather battery or truck adapter for the portable samplers? Interesting. I certainly, if you have a truck adapter, when you say truck adapter, I think of plugging something into your cigarette lighter type of setup. I don't know that we have anything like that. Did we used to have something like that for the portable refrigerator, Jeff?
Yeah, for the Avalanche and the Glacier, we had that option where you could run off of that. We do not have that option anymore. When those went away, I think that option went away. We have like it's an alligator clamp option where you can just hook it up to the top terminals on a battery, and then has a connector that goes and plugs into the sampler on the other end. So that's the main one. That's the most popular one that was used. Is we call it the alligator clamp one. You can find that on our online store. You can just search up power cables on the online store, and you can find pictures of it, pricing, everything you need for that there. So.
I have one here from Brooke. She says a common adapter I use cannot be found on the Teledyne website now. Has some of the tubing adapters been discontinued? And I do believe that, Brooke, if you can hop on our online store and put in the part number of that, that will tell you whether or not it's a current item or not. Yes, I do believe that a number, not a large number, but some of the adapters and other supporting accessory components that either were discontinued during the pandemic, oftentimes because of component availability issues that we ran into and complications from our manufacturing. But also there were a handful of things that we would sell one or two in the span of a 3 or 4 year period, and it just didn't make any sense for us to continue to manufacture some of these things. So reach out to us if we can help try to find a suitable replacement for what it is you need. I'm sure that we can do that.
Yeah, the old clamp collars that we used to have that had some like press clamps that on the end of it, it was kind of more like a straight through coupler. Those did go away. I think we only have one type of coupler that we offer, and it's a clamp-less type coupler. One screws in, and the other one has hose barb ends that fits in. I think those are the only ones we actually offer right now. So.
Cool. David asked a question, what to do with old samplers? What's your advice, Jeff, for someone who asked that question?
The electronics in it, you can recycle the electronics at any place that takes any type of recycling, takes TVs and stuff like that. You can recycle the electronics there. The plastic and stuff like that, there are places that do take plastics and stuff. You can take the stainless steel metal off of it and recycle that normally, but the only thing that's kind of really hazardous is, there's lead in the solder on the board. So that's the only thing you really have to be concerned about. There's also a battery on the board in there if you're recycling them. So those are the only things I would be concerned about. Everything else is just, a piece of plastic or metal that can go into the landfills without contaminating or anything like that. So yeah, just the main board, and the other one is to any type of recycling place.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the things that I've run into from time to time is the complication of having mixed materials all together. There would be some disassembly required in order to properly functionally recycle the components. So you're absolutely right, Jeff.
One from Brooke here. Will Teledyne consider doing demonstrations at wastewater lab workshops? I know we have our equipment and stuff at shows and stuff like that. You can actually do hands-on and look at the stuff and everything like that. I don't think we really do a lot of demonstrations. Bob, you probably have a little more on that.
Right. Well, no, I think that's a great question. And every demonstration is an opportunity to learn something. So yeah, Brooke, depending on where you're located at on the map, I would urge you to go to our website, look under in the upper right-hand corner of our website, choose the Find Your Rep function, and type in your zip code and click samplers, and that will pop up contact information for your local rep. Almost all of our reps own samplers, either demo equipment or other equipment that they keep in their inventory. And last time I checked, those guys love giving sampler demonstrations. It's part of the process for them. So I would urge you to do that, Brooke, and I'm sure we can get somebody out to show you what we got.
Hey, David had indicated that he's speaking of functional old samplers. As far as, would you still recycle those, or what is your suggestion?
If they're still functioning, I mean, I would use them. I mean, those samplers, the 15, 1680s that Bob talked about, they're still out there working. Some of the parts you can't get on there, the tubing and stuff for those, we can still get tubing for all those older type samplers. So you can actually still replace tubing and stuff on there. It's kind of the same tubing that we're using on the newer stuff. So yeah, I mean, if it's working, keep using it. Even the power products are the same as what the new products as the old products. So they're kind of retroactive on the power products too. So if it's still working, still use it. We love it. Buy a new one and upgrade for new functionality and features. But hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Well, if there ever was a testament as to why our tech service guys are the best and not salespeople, Jeff just gave the answer. There's no doubt about it. One of the great things about working for ISCO and selling ISCO samplers is that you do get a chance to get out in the field and see, 20, 25-year-old ISCO technology that's still functioning and working. And Jeff's right. There's no reason why you wouldn't be able to continue to use that stuff as long as you can keep it functional, get the consumables like the tubing and the suction line for it. He also makes a great point. With our manufacturers reps and the people we have, we're constantly pushing the envelope on technology. And there's lots of new functionality and remote communications that those older models don't have. So take a look at your application and decide what it is you really need to do. And then if you can get away with doing that with existing equipment, by all means, I would suggest you go ahead and proceed to do that. We're not naive. We know that many of our customers are municipal government in nature, and they have limited budgets. So, if I were in those shoes, and I had been prior to working for ISCO, I would try to get as much bang for my buck as I could out of my existing equipment.
Well, Bob, and David's telling us they just have too many. So that,
Can't have too many.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you for saying that, Jeff. It's music to my ears. That's funny.
Got another question here. Availability of the 3710 new heads from Bill here. No, we don't. You can't get the whole head by itself. You can get pretty much all the parts that you need individually for a 3710, but you cannot get just the whole kind of head or the whole sampler. They discontinued that here back a while ago. That sampler actually was designed in the early 90s for that. So a very old design sampler, so the parts availability is really hard to get on that. So we still have parts for a short more time here, but no, can't get whole different units there. Another one here from Victor. How long does the battery in the circuit board last? So generally on those, I've seen them last as long as 20 years in there. What the battery's for on the circuit board is for is to keep your program in the unit or to keep your time. Like if you remove your battery on there, I have seen them last, up to 20 years. A good way to test that to see if they're still working is put your program into the unit, unplug it from the power for a few minutes, and then plug it back in. If it kept your program, if it kept your date and time, that means that battery is still good and you don't have to replace that. All of those batteries can be replaced. They are solder in batteries because of the vibration and the movement of the pump. We always have to solder those batteries in, but that is something that can be replaced, if they do go bad. So
I got another one here from Avery. She's asking or stating that they have problems with cold weather killing the battery during sampler routines. So a couple of things I'd say there, and then Jeff, I'll let you have more experience on that to comment after I throw a few things out there. But I would just say, first of all, take a look at what battery you're using. You haven't commented on whether or not it's one of the batteries that you purchased from us. Those smaller batteries that fit underneath the hood and sit right next to the controller are going to have either a 4 or a 6.5 amp hour rating, which is not a lot. And then when you get into really cold weather, that does put additional strain on the load for those batteries. I'm a big believer in the more power the better. So if you have a longer term sampler deployment, or if you have a short-term deployment, but you're running the pump and you're taking samples every 5 minutes for a 24-hour period, that's 12 samples an hour times 24 is 288 samples. And if each one of those is 20 feet ahead, you're lifting, and it's 60 feet of suction line, that pump is running like crazy, and you'll take a die hard and make it die hard. So I would take a look at your sampling routine, how frequently you're taking samples, how much lift you have, and then adjust the size of your battery in terms of its amp hour rating accordingly.
Yep, and that was the cable we were talking about earlier with the alligator clamps. You can use that to power off of pretty much any 12-volt source. So
yeah.
Another question here: what is the recommended maintenance to perform with the 6712? The main maintenance, pretty much the only maintenance that you really need to do, is to change the pump tube regularly. You want to change that pump tube before it breaks. If the pump tube breaks, you can still bring water up, and you can risk water damaging some of the components on there. So changing the pump tube is the main thing that you want to do for maintenance, and you want to change those when the warning comes up on the screen. There'll be an actual indicator that says, hey, time to change your pump tube on the screen. When you see that, you want to start watching that tubing, because you want to always change it before it breaks. Once you change the tubing, then you go into the programming and you reset that interval, and it just uses that as a good indicator, to do that. When you're in there changing that tubing, you can get debris buildup from the silicone tubing on the rollers and stuff in there, sometimes dust, dirt, all that kind of stuff, sand if you're out in the desert. You want to maybe just clean that inside cavity of the pumps as well too. Just a clean, damp rag is usually enough. Compressed air, you can use that to blow out any debris that's in there too, but very, very good maintenance to do. That's really the only maintenance you have to do. The other maintenance is changing like your suction line and stuff like that, but very little maintenance really that you have to do on these. Another
People ask me, just to add on to that, Jeff, people ask me, what we do to clean those units. And, I don't really, they're made of really durable plastic. You know, cleaning them with high pressure or high temperature is probably okay, but I wouldn't do it every day. It's really, it's like anything else. If you want it to last, you try to take good care of it. You use warm water and a mild soap like Dawn or something like that works just as well as anything for cleaning the exterior surface and that plastic. You obviously don't want to use super aggressive chemicals or intense high pressure dishwashers or those kinds of things. Over time, that can cause the plastic to weaken and degrade.
Another one from David here about lubrication. So there's really no lubrication needed on these samplers. We don't recommend any type of lubrication. We have seen people that'll put grease inside the actual sample chamber, for the paddles. They think it helps with that. All the testing we have done has shown that it actually causes the tubing to wear faster and not last as long. So really no type of lubrication is needed at all. Basically just get it as clean as you can. And yeah, no lubrication at all is needed. So. I do not have any more questions. How about Bob?
Nor I. Sharon?
Okay, well, we would like to thank everyone for joining us today and submitting such great questions.